to the Clemson Dubcast, Thursday, September 9th. Another week winding down. Man, after an interminable offseason in August, things are starting to fly by. I don't like it. But anyway, plenty of coverage at TigerIllustrated.com right now. The football team got the Thursday video review segment up, taking an in-depth look at how masterfully, really, Brent Venables' defense did against Georgia's varying attempts at tempo last Saturday night. Also, Paul Strelo got you covered with plenty more updates on all things recruiting at TigerIllustrated.com. My good friends Blake Smith and Brooke Archenhold have been part of the podcast since the beginning, way back in August of 2018. They have an accomplished team of personal injury attorneys at Parham, Smith, and Archenhold based in Greenville. They are Clemson people, and their skillful attorneys have decades of experience in complicated litigation matters, taking a special interest in medical malpractice, nursing home abuse, and neglect, car accident cases that have left the individuals involved in serious trouble. For a free consultation at Parham, Smith, and Archenhold, call 864-990-4581 or online at parhamlaw.com. That's PARHAM law.com. Celero Communications, formerly known as Tandem Payment, is a full-service integrated electronic payments provider powered by leading-edge technology. Celero provides a wide array of merchant solutions, simplified payments. They make onboarding, taking payments, maintaining risk management and compliance, and getting support quick and easy. At Celero, they're all about helping you achieve sustainable growth as a business. Taking payments isn't the only thing your business needs. With Celero's solutions, you can manage inventory, sell products and services via social media, schedule staff, track sales, get reports, and much, much more. Find out more about Celero at celerocommerce.com. That's CELERO commerce.com.
Football season is grilling season, and Jack Oliver's Pool Spa and Patio is South Carolina's premier source for the big three: Weber, Traeger, and Big Green Egg Grills. Blackstone Griddles, too. I'm Jack Oliver. Grill all your tailgate favorites to perfection with a premium gas, charcoal, or pellet grill, then top it all off with something sizzling from your Blackstone griddle. For grills, griddles, patio furniture, hot tubs, and saunas, shop in store or online at Jack Oliver's Pool Spa and Patio, Forest Drive in Columbia, and jackoliverpools.com.
All right, three great guests today, starting with Andy Staples, Cole Cubelic, and then Brett McMurphy. Andy and Cole are going to talk mainly about the goings-on right now in football. Then Brett's going to tell his story, highlighted by his departure from ESPN and then getting paid by ESPN while beating ESPN on some major stories as he posted on Facebook. I had forgotten about a lot of the details of that, but just truly fascinating stuff. Okay, here we go, starting with Andy. Joined by Andy Staples, one of my favorites, covers college football better than anybody, in my opinion. How you doing, man?
Doing good.
How do you cover all this extra stuff in addition to the actual season? I mean, you got realignment and all that, and name, image, likeness. Is it a pain in the ass?
No, you just pick what's the most interesting thing right now, and you try to keep track as well as you can. Somebody asked me today, who are some of the young assistant coaches that impressed you, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I have no answer for you at the moment. Give me a few weeks because I've been trying to figure out when Texas and Oklahoma will be playing in the SEC. And that's the thing. You just sort of parcel it out. The NIL stuff, I've found that nobody cares to read about it. Look, DJ Uiagalelei's in a Dr. Pepper commercial. Awesome. Great. The ratings were boffo for the game, so clearly it didn't turn people off.
Yeah, it's like, what a great weekend of college football. And, oh, yeah, it's still the same. People, the biggest complaint I heard the last few months is just not going to be the same. Well, it seemed pretty freaking good to me, at least.
Yeah, it's fine. No, the people arguing against that, I hate to say it, they're dumb. They've been dumb. Their arguments have been stupid all along. But because here's the thing. I can say they're stupid because they've been proven wrong multiple times over multiple decades. They just reheated the Major League Baseball argument against Curt Flood, and then they just reheated the NFL argument when that free agency case went to court. You can keep reheating the same argument, but history has shown you will be wrong. So you could just stop.
All right. Did you watch the Georgia Clemson game?
Of course.
Okay, just making sure.
Who didn't?
I'm just saying.
Who didn't? That did a major rating.
You said you were really busy with other stuff, so I'm just making sure that you're still watching
watch the games, Larry. I can text people while I watch.
All right. I was just making sure you watch closely. So last week I wrote a column going into the game saying this is the year that defenses answer at the top levels of college football. After all the pyrotechnics that we've seen in the last 5 or 6 years, we just have some ridiculously talented defenses returning a lot of players. But I did not expect neither offense to reach the end zone. I mean, let's put it this way: from 77 to 88, Clemson and Georgia played 11 times. They were 5-5-1. Great rivalry, great series. The average score was 15-14. And I wrote, hey, we're not saying that's going to happen, like maybe more like, 20-17. So how shocked were you that?
I was not shocked that Georgia didn't. Their 5 best receiving threats weren't playing.
Yeah.
I don't think Clemson has that excuse.
Yep.
That's the thing. That they didn't block. And Georgia's got a great defensive line, but they have the kind of defensive line you're going to see in the college football playoff. And you have to be able to block that kind of talent. And, that's, go back to 2008, the 2018 season when Clemson crushed Alabama, everybody said, that Alabama defensive line going to run over that Clemson offensive line. That Clemson offensive line dominated that game. And you have to have that. And for whatever reason, Clemson, despite recruiting at the same level in almost every other position group as Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, all those teams that we always talk about, offensive line has not been there. They went and got Jackson Carman out of Ohio, but it's not the same. They're not putting as many offensive linemen in the NFL. That seems to be the difference.
And beyond that, even their receivers didn't really look interested. I don't want to say interested, but they did not hold up well on the perimeter stuff. Georgia was just taking it to them. In that,
I've been wondering about that, Larry, because last year it seemed like ETN had to make up a lot in the passing game, and I realized, losing Justin Ross for the year had a lot to do with that. But I kind of wondered when Amari Rogers and Cornell Powell are gone, how do you replace that production plus the production that ETN get? Because I think ETN caught 49 passes last year. Mm-hmm. So, it is a legitimate question because and I think it's a case of us being spoiled watching Clemson. They have just reloaded at receiver every single year, whether it's Nuke Hopkins, Sammy Watkins, Mike Williams, T. Higgins, Amari Rogers, Justin Ross. It's just one after the other. And this last group, which, by the way, same level recruits as the other guys, have not produced at the level that the previous guys did.
What I guess the most alarming thing to me from the Clemson perspective in that game, we knew Georgia. Well, we should have known. Everybody should have known. Georgia had a frightening defensive front, which I thought going into the season, even before Saturday, was the best in college football. Just the blend of speed and athleticism and size is just extraordinary. I think that's the best defense I've seen since the 2016 Alabama. By
the way, Clemson scored a bunch on that team.
Yeah, because they had a Superman at quarterback largely. I mean, that offensive line wasn't great, or even I wouldn't even call them really good.
Yeah, I mean they just wore them out with tempo but they also had some really good receivers on that team. Yeah. Guys that are in the NFL now producing at a very high level.
But anyway, the alarming thing to me is that, we knew the offensive line was going to be a work in progress early in the year. You got a first-time, not just first-time starter at center, but a first-time center at center, and Matt Bockhorst. You have a true freshman at left guard and Marcus Tate, who's going to be really good, but he's a freshman. It wasn't just that; it was overall they seem like a finesse offense to me. On the perimeter blocking and things like that. Georgia just seemed like they are built differently. And
they are. And the thing is, like, we don't know about Georgia yet because, a lot of those offensive weapons are coming back. And if they still struggle to find the end zone with them, then I don't know that we can anoint Georgia as anything either. But at least they have the benefit of the doubt right now. With Clemson, you're like, okay, you're going to have to develop the guys you got. Now, fortunately for them, the schedule allows them to do that. But unfortunately for them, the schedule also allows them to do that, because how do you claw your way back into the playoff hunt if nobody respects your schedule? Now, they can hope that NC State has a good year, which is entirely possible. Pitt could be very good this year. I thought Florida State looked quite a bit better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Against Notre Dame. So it's possible that they're going to have some games that right now don't look that great on paper that wind up looking like really good wins at the end of the season. But right now, this is a concern for them, is if that doesn't materialize, because at this point you're relying on Boston College or Pitt or Florida State to hold up their end of the bargain on that. It may not matter what Clemson does the rest of the way, because if they get into a comparison with Georgia head to head, Georgia's going to win it.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, the remaining schedule for Clemson, and you're saying, maybe maybe there will be some strong teams that they're able to collect on their resume. Andy, they could lose one of those games, and then it's a moot point.
Yeah, exactly. And look, if they do, this is where I think I'm thinking about what we've said so far, Larry, and we've been very negative here.
We're overreacting.
Before we do this, before we get into that, the idea of Clemson losing a game and finishing 10-2 and probably still winning the ACC, but not making the college football playoff. Let's everybody think back 10 years and just imagine how much you would have wished this could happen.
Not 10 years, Andy, like 6 or 7 years. I mean, going into the 2015 season,
yeah.
If you would have told Clemson fans you're going to the playoff not 6 years in a row, just this year, they would have flipped out.
Yeah.
And so now it's like that or bust. So you make a great point. I keep thinking back to the end of the 18 season, January of 19, 44-16.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people, including yours truly, were asking the question, man, has Dabo surpassed Saban? And, Saban had the turnstile of assistants and all that. We weren't used to him getting just boat raced to that degree.
Yeah.
In hindsight, it feels like, and
all he did was energize Saban, unfortunately.
Well, in hindsight,
Saban's like, hold my beer.
In hindsight, it feels like, and tell me if you agree with this, when you're at the top of the mountain like that, like Clemson was, it is almost impossible to avoid getting complacent. It's just human nature. Yeah, and then and you look at not just Alabama saying hold my beer in response to Clemson doing what it did, but Georgia and Ohio State as well, sort of redoubling their efforts, I guess, or getting more serious, if that makes sense. And now here those three programs are, and Clemson fans are going, are we really in their class right now? Do you think that is perhaps a part of this, is that the trappings of great success, and then also sort of the motivations of Alabama and others looking at Clemson and going, holy crap, we better get really serious about this?
Well, it's not just that, because here's the thing. Clemson never had the recruiting rankings that Alabama had, or that Georgia has had in the past 3 or 4 years. Clemson was always kind of right there in the top 5, but never number 1 every year or number 2 every year. And so their roster is not as bulletproof. So if they choose wisely, they can still be just as good as those other ones. But if they have a little dip, then they're not. And so I don't think this means that Clemson can't, let's say next year, if everything comes together and everybody develops the way they're supposed to, like, be just like Alabama or Georgia. They can. They absolutely can. They have the roster for it. But if they have a couple misses, and remember, I think this was the best evaluating staff in college football for 10 years. And that made up for not being number 1 or number 2 in the recruiting rankings. But even the best evaluating staff is not going to be perfect. Alabama and Georgia, the way they recruit, it sort of takes a lot of the needing to be perfect out of it. If they made a mistake on somebody, great, hit the transfer portal.
Yeah. Well, and then that's another topic, the portal. Those programs go out and cherry pick talent from the portal, whereas Clemson has yet to do that. Do you think Dabo is going to need to adapt? I mean,
everybody needs to adapt. It's the part I don't understand. All Nick Saban does is adapt.
Yep.
If you're another college football coach, just do what he does. Like, if there's something he's doing and you're like, oh, I'll never do that, stop it. Just do what he does. He's smarter than you.
You mentioned Florida State. I tell you, man, even if they would have lost by 17, I was uplifted by what I saw out of them, out of their body language, out of their substance. Like how many years have we seen all that after the whistle crap and throat slashes and things like that? I saw none of that. And it took me a half to be a believer in Norvell just based off the body language that I saw and the focus and just playing ball. They're learning to play ball. Did you have the same, Did you walk away with the same impression?
I was very impressed because that roster's shouldn't be good enough to hang with Notre Dame like that. It's not there yet. And you're going to see when they play Clemson. I mean, unless Florida State just plays out of its mind, Clemson's going to still have no problem with them. But they've done such a good job in the transfer portal, not just picking guys at positions where they needed people, but changing their locker room, changing how their team is led. Mackenzie Milton, even though, remember, he didn't get picked as a starting quarterback. He did come in, and we'll see if he winds up being the starter going forward. But from what people have told me in Tallahassee, him just being there, being around the guys, has changed the way people act, because he's a guy who's won before, and the players respect that. They respect that he was the starting quarterback on an undefeated team. Like, that matters to them. And Jermaine Johnson coming from Georgia. Jermaine Johnson is the best player on their roster, which tells you everything you need to know about Georgia and everything you need to know about Florida State. Jermaine Johnson would have been a rotation guy. He probably would have had a sack the other night against Clemson. But he would not have been an every down guy like he is at Florida State because Georgia's that loaded. And so he wanted to show he's an every down guy. He goes to Florida State, and he comes in bringing the knowledge of how Georgia works in the offseason, day in, day out. And he can pass that along to his teammates who have not really ever had to work that way and don't know. Because the coaches can say it all they want. You need to do this, you need to do that. Sometimes certain players need to hear it from another player. And I think they did a good job of selecting guys who could pass that sort of information along that players would respect. And it certainly seemed, they looked like a completely different team. And from a roster standpoint, they're not that much better than they were last year.
If I could take this back to Clemson for a minute, you see Alabama doing what it's done on offense. You mentioned Saban adapting. Of course, he's become the pioneer of cutting-edge offensive football. When you watch Clemson schematically, do you purely say, well, they don't have the offensive line, so that you can't? It's hard to do anything if you don't have the blocking, or do you say they could be doing more things to scheme their way out of some of those weaknesses?
I think they're going to have to against the better teams on their schedule. I think that if they are going to try to play straight up and not be able to do it, then you have to scheme your way, and it's fine. That they've shown. This coaching staff has shown it's capable of doing that. This coaching staff has shown it's capable of using tempo, of using formations, motion, all of those things to help the quarterback, help the skill players, and kind of help the offensive line not have to physically dominate every single time. And that's what everybody should be doing. Alabama does that too. Even though their offensive line can physically dominate, their offensive scheme is such that it doesn't always have to. Now, right. Georgia is kind of still trying to work to that point. They've never quite figured that out. I think that the general idea is that's what's supposed to happen. But right now they have so many skill guys hurt that the offensive line is actually more of a strength. So they just ride that. But yeah, that's important in today's game, because there are going to be times when there are more rushers than you have blockers. And you need to have answers for that. You need to have given your quarterback those answers long before the game started. And so these guys can do it. They've proven over the years that they can do it. I have no doubt in Tony Elliott and Brandon Streeter and all those guys that they can handle this.
Speaking of cutting edge offense, I didn't watch Ole Miss last year at all, but I sat down and watched them Monday night, I guess it was. I was blown away at the scheme, and Matt Corral, he looks like the best quarterback in the country.
And he did at times last year too. And then he had a game where he threw 6 interceptions and a game where he threw 5. So that's if he can eliminate those types of games, you're talking about the first quarterback off the board in the draft.
He's like a Joe Burrow with a stronger arm and more mobile. Is that?
Yeah, Joe's pretty mobile.
Yeah,
I'd say they're about
is.
equal in mobility. But yes, the big question coming into last year was whether, it'd be Matt Corral or John Rice Plumlee. And you're like, man, John Rice Plumlee is so fast and so explosive. But that undersold how fast Matt Corral is, and also how just he's got the spidey sense in the pocket where he can get out of things. And I think you saw that against Alabama last year, where there were a lot of plays where they couldn't block for him. And he would just, okay, that's fine. I'm going to roll out here and, I'll get whatever I need to get. We'll get a first down and we'll just keep on moving. Or we'll get a 4th and 2. And I know, because my coaching staff has told me, we are going for 4th and less than this from this yard line or closer, that we don't have to look back at the sideline. Like when I get tackled at 4th and 2, we just look at the sideline and get the play. We don't have to point toward the end zone and say, let's go for it. We're going for it. Defenses do not like that. Defenses cannot handle that. Like it blows their minds when Ole Miss on 3rd down gets tackled short of the stick and just lines up and runs a play. And, oh, by the way, they're probably lining up in a drastically different formation than they lined up in last play, but they haven't substituted.
Yeah, there's like 2.5 minutes left in the game. They're up 43-24. And they're just running their offense, man. Corral's still in there. They're still throwing it. It's just like
yeah. They played a decent, they played decent defense the other night, which was the thing that was shocking, because they were not very good on defense last year. Now, look, I don't know how good Louisville was. We'll find out. I mean, they're an ACC Atlantic team, so you guys will see quite a bit of them this year. But I just think the fact that Ole Miss is a little bit better makes their prospects more interesting, because they were already the kind of team that scared you, that no matter what scared you, because they could score so much. But if they could play a little bit of defense, holy cow.
I think they are second in the West, and I think they give Bama fits. I just think they're that good and that hard to defend. Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
What the hell is wrong with LSU?
I don't know. They're supposed to have all this stuff fixed. The coordinator hires are supposed to bring things back toward 2019, not necessarily exactly like it, obviously, because it's a different set of players. But an offense is very similar to the one they ran in 2019, a defense similar to the one they ran in 2019. Defensively, they seem to have the same communication issues they had last year, just assignment issues that haven't been – the scheme's different, but things didn't get fixed. And then offensively, they spent so much time pre-snap trying to get to the perfect play instead of just going, you know what, we got better athletes than these guys. Let's just throw it short, let our guys catch it, and see if they can do something with it. Because, 1 time out of 5, they probably are going to do something with it, and then all of a sudden it gets really interesting.
If you just looked at the score of that game, you probably thought, okay, they just farted around and lost.
Yeah,
but if you watch the game, they got freaking mauled. Absolutely mauled.
Yeah, and that shouldn't happen. I mean, look at the recruiting rankings between those 2 schools. Like, you're significantly better. They don't have a single 5-star prospect on their roster, and you have 6 on your roster. Like, you should be able to beat that team. And if you lose that team, it shouldn't be because you got manhandled.
Yeah, that's the thing is, Chip Kelly has been developing, and I don't know when you're good on the line of scrimmage, like you said. I don't know that star ratings are really, and the other team doesn't hold up like LSU didn't. I mean, it's kind of a great equalizer.
Well, no, I mean it matters. Like Georgia signs a bunch of 5-star and high 4-star offensive linemen. How'd that work out for them Saturday night?
Right.
Like that, they protected their quarterback better than Clemson protected its quarterback when both defensive lines were loaded with that type of player.
Is it? Are you kind of fascinated with how Chip Kelly is doing it?
I am, because I don't know why it took so long. Like,
well, I'm saying the physically punishing style.
I'm not surprised by that. He always liked inside run. Those Oregon teams were very good running the ball inside. Mm-hmm. They would beat you up front if they could. They didn't always have the top recruits on the line, but they did a good job developing them so that they made sure they were hitting you in the mouth up front. And their best games on offense were the ones where they're just handing off to little Michael James up the middle, and he's just running through these massive holes.
What's your take on Ohio State right now?
I think they're good. I think I was more impressed with Minnesota than I was worried about Ohio State after the other night. Minnesota seems pretty well built to play in the division they're in. The Big Ten West, the best teams are Iowa and Wisconsin usually. That strikes me as a lineup and a style that will play very well against Wisconsin and Iowa. So I thought that they looked fine. And then Ohio State, C.J. Stroud, once he got going, I feel like was really, really good. I was impressed by him. He seemed comfortable in the pocket. He seemed able to move around, but not necessarily to move around to scramble and gain yards that way. He was going to buy some time and find an open receiver. So I think Ohio State's going to be just fine. I'm very curious to see them against Oregon, because this will probably be the best roster they see the rest of the year in terms of just pure talent. Now, Kayvon Thibodeau, I don't know if he's going to play, so that doesn't help Oregon's case. But Justin Flo, Noah Sewell, those are guys that they're dudes. I mean, they're first-round draft pick type guys. And so I want to see what Ohio State does against them. And my guess is they'll be just fine, because it's a good offensive line. I don't know how deep they are on the D-line. Their front line D-line is very good. I don't know how deep they go. But everything else seems very much exactly what you'd want it to be. And TreVeyon Henderson, whew,
oh man,
that guy,
unbelievable,
he's awesome.
If you're playing the shrink for Clemson fans who are on the ledge right now and fearing the worst and saying, "Oh, our the glory days are over. We're never going to get what we got back." What's the most optimistic route back to where they were?
Everybody dips a little. And at this point, we're only talking about a one-game dip. We're not even talking about a season dip. So don't worry about that. There's still a lot of talent on that roster. They got a great defensive line. We know DJ's a good quarterback. We saw him play last year. It's going to be fine. It's just they may not make the playoff this year. And the way the system's set up and the way the ACC is right now, it works against them. If this were 2016, maybe it doesn't work. Maybe losing to Georgia right off the bat does not work against them so much, because Florida State was good, Louisville was good. All of those wins would have more than buoyed them, through the year. This is a different situation. So, but I think they're going to be fine. I'd be shocked if they didn't win at least 10 games in the regular season and then win the bowl game.
I've been telling Clemson fans, look at one of the only bright points from Saturday was just be glad this wasn't like an opening ACC showdown in Blacksburg or Raleigh, because you probably would have lost.
Exactly. And I mean, ask North Carolina how that feels. Not only did they lose, not only did they the hype train get derailed, they're now a game back in the division.
Andy, thank you so much, man. I know your time's valuable. Really appreciate you joining us, man.
My pleasure, Larry.
All right, joined by Cole Cubelic. How you doing, man? Thanks for rejoining us, frequent guest on the podcast.
Absolutely. Doing great, Larry. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, where are you headed this weekend?
I'm on my way to Tuscaloosa as we speak. I got the Mercer Bears at 3 o'clock Central on SEC Network. So get a chance to see number one team in person. It's always cool.
I was really surprised earlier this week when watching Nick Saban's press conference. This is like the classic time for him to go off right after a huge win and an overmatched team coming in. And on top of that, a reporter asks what they were planning on doing on Labor Day, like as if they're take the day off. I was just ready for him to lose it.
I didn't know anybody who was involved in football even recognized Labor Day.
Oh, it's great.
Everybody asked me, like, are y'all doing a show? Are you and Greg doing your radio show? And I'm like, the Monday after week one of college football? Yeah, man, we're probably going to be on the air.
Yeah, we're going to be on the lake. We might grill some brats, just hanging out. I guess we should stop being blown away by Alabama, but not just Bryce Young, not just Jamison Williams, not just the names you recognize on defense, but I was watching them, and a cornerback or defensive back number 14, I forgot his name, he's a sophomore. I'd never heard of him. And you just see him blowing up horizontal screen stuff, just tearing through blockers and making plays. It's just remarkable how they just continue not just stockpiling talent, but also the assembly line of remarkably well-trained and vicious developed players. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, Brian Branch. He's a good player, versatile player, and you think about Malachi Moore, Josh Jobe, all in that secondary, guys that have played a pretty good amount of football, and then you add Kool-Aid McKinstry, some other high-profile recruits, some guys that have been there for a year or two that haven't played a lot. There's going to be talent there, and there's guys that are just waiting their turn to get in and make plays. And then you see Cam Latu on offense. You see Brian Robinson. He's been waiting 4 years to be the feature back. It's just it's like no pun intended, it is like a tidal wave. Just the talent just continues to flow in like that. The tide never really goes in. It seems to always just stay full. And I think that's a tribute. You have to attribute that to the consistency. And Nick Saban referenced this offseason about Bill O'Brien coming in, that they're still going to run Alabama's offense. Bill's going to call it, and there are things he'll be able to do to make it his own, but it's Alabama's offense. And you heard that from Lane Kiffin. You heard it from Steve Sarkisian. And they're all going to have their own twist on it, but the verbiage is going to stay close to the same. The blueprint, the foundation of it is going to be very close to the same. And that's, I think, why they're able to just sort of, the defense is always going to be the same, but that's why they're able to just sort of plug and go. And you add that to the resources that are available, the manpower, and then just the overall talent that he accumulates. And it feels like it makes them an unstoppable force. And I don't know why. Last year is more explainable because I think when you look at what they did last year, the culture inside of that building, I don't think gets enough credit for not just winning a title, but the way they won a title. You see the stories about Landon Dickerson holding workouts at his house and getting equipment and ice delivered for cold baths. And there were a lot of kids last year, Larry, across all of college football that were looking for ways out. And not trying to minimize any of them, how or why or what. But there were very few teams that had as many guys as Alabama that were looking for ways in. A lot of guys were, let's take the parachute, we'll take the slide down, we'll take the emergency exit. Alabama was, they brought the sledgehammer to the door. They brought the grappling hooks to climb up the wall. Like, they were breaking windows. Like, they had the little key to be able to, pick a lock. Like, they were doing anything they could to get into that season. And they wanted to go try to win a title. And the culture was largely responsible for that because it's just what you're expected to be when you're a part of that franchise. So I think that maybe last year sort of heightened that, and a lot of those guys saw it, and that's why they have gotten to be ready for this year. But that was super impressive. I didn't expect it. I thought it would be much more ground and pound. I did not think it would be an offense that was as centered around the quarterback. And I left that game when I watched the film on Sunday thinking, man, that thing goes through Bryce Young. This is not we're going to run it and try to make people submit, and then if our quarterback has to make a play here and there, we think he can be able to do that. I mean, it's Bryce Young's offense, and they just have a good running game to go with it. So it was impressive to watch. And you got guys like Will Anderson at defensive end that looked like he was going to be unstoppable, and then Christian Harris at linebacker, and To'o transfers in, and there's just guys all over the place. And they gobbled up Miami in a way that not many people thought was realistic.
Bryce Young looks more like a point guard than a traditional quarterback. Does that make sense? The way he distributes.
Absolutely. Yeah, he doesn't have the Trevor Lawrence stature. I think that's definitely fair. And I think what comes with that is the twitch and how quick he can change directions. And that's not just running right and then cutting left. That's turning his body from being able to throw to the right hash to go to the left hash, or being able to leave one part of the pocket, get to another part of the pocket, and then set up and get the ball out. Just, you don't see a lot of quarterbacks that are as twitched up as he is. And usually when they are, they don't really have the understanding of being able to find that calm after they're exerting a full amount of energy to either reset and deliver a pass or deliver a pass on the run. A lot of quarterbacks who can usually move like that, it's always 100 miles an hour. And he has a really good feel for, go full speed and then kind of relax, be able to deliver football, or set up, relax, deliver football. And that's something that, we keep getting surprised about all these quarterbacks that show up in college ready to play, but it does feel like it's becoming more the norm. And I think it's just, there's more camps, there's more 7-on-7, there's more quarterback competitions growing up. All these guys have private coaches now. So I think especially the higher profile quarterbacks, the ones that in 7th grade, 8th grade, they probably know they're going to be playing Power 5 football. They know the things to do to go get prepared. I mean, it's not just show up on campus, start getting ready to be a Division I quarterback. I mean, these guys, 9th, 10th grade, are starting to prepare to be Division I quarterbacks. Communication. Now, I had gone to Stockton's game in Rabun County a couple weeks ago, and you hear about the things that he's doing. You hear about the way that he's preparing. I mean, that guy's been getting ready to be a Power 5 quarterback for 3 or 4 years now.
He's amazing.
So, yeah, he's been just a fun player to watch. So, I don't think these young men anymore are, man, I just hope I can get that scholarship, and then once I get there, we'll start learning how to do it. No, they want to know how to do it before they decide where they're going. And then most of them are going to try to get there early to get a head start on that entire process, and then hope everything works out. Whether it's like Trevor and he, quarter of the way through his freshman year he starts, or Bryce Young and boom, right off the bat, his redshirt freshman year he's starting. Either way, those guys are coming in more prepared than ever before.
Alabama was relatively down last year on defense. Clemson was down on defense last year. Both of them return a ridiculous amount of talent. Georgia lost a good bit on the back end from last year, but still has just an absurd defensive front on the line and at linebacker. Do you think I'm crazy for thinking that after 5 or 6 years of offenses lighting it up and that being sort of the key to winning a title, that this year is when defense is going to answer and have sort of the last word, just based on how fortified a lot of these elite programs are on the defensive side of the ball?
I think it depends on the extent in which you really believe that's going to happen. I mean, let's just look at Saturday for a minute. It felt like we were living in 1992 again. Wisconsin and Penn State couldn't get a touchdown. Georgia Clemson couldn't get a touchdown. And by the way, I have no problem with that. I'm all for it. I actually think it makes it more tense than 42-45 with a minute and a half to go. Because at that point, you're just kind of like, okay, they're going to score to go up, but how much time is going to be left for the other team to get the ball and potentially go and score and go up again? Rather than, all right, we might only have one more shot to get even a field goal here or a touchdown. Like, every play means that much more in those kind of games, to me at least. And maybe other people don't watch it that way. So I loved watching that Penn State-Wisconsin game. I wish I would have been able to watch Georgia Clemson live. I was doing Florida FAU, but going back and watching the film, I'm sitting there kind of on the edge of my seat like, are they going to be able to do anything here towards the end? There's only so many chances left. And so I think what you're going to see is defenses in general are going to bounce back from what they were last year. It's funny that I'm on my way to Tuscaloosa right now. We had the Kentucky game here a year ago. I think it was week 7, 8, something like that. I mean, number one team in the nation, rolling through everybody. And we had a chance to visit with Coach Saban, and I said, Coach, I just want to ask you, because we all obviously trust and respect your defensive acumen and your background. A lot of defenses are really struggling this year. What would you attribute that to? And he gave us a great answer, but he kind of summed it up before he went into detail, and it's something that we all should have thought about, something we all should have sort of known. He said, listen, these offenses, they can go out there and they can work their mesh, they can take snaps, they can throw, they can work the timing on their routes, they can run their motions, they can have their hots and their checks and different things and option plays. He said, what's my defense going to do? Mm-hmm. Defense can't do a damn thing on air. That was his exact quote. And it was almost like a pie in the face moment, because I know I wasn't the only one before the season saying, these defenses are probably going to dominate, because it's going to be see ball, get ball, the timing, the rhythm is all going to be off. The chemistry is going to be off offensively. They're going to be dropping snaps, and they're going to be sailing balls, and they're going to be intercepted. And, offensive linemen are going to be getting just blown up because they haven't been able to practice the way they want to. And it didn't happen that way. But I thought the way that he phrased it was great. And I think that's why a team like Ole Miss, Monday night, you saw them take a pretty big step. I'm not saying they're a top 20 defense in the nation, and I don't care who it was against. Larry, I had Ole Miss 4 times last year. They didn't tackle anybody.
Yeah.
Like, they couldn't get people to the ground. And so just to see them in the open field a couple of times against pretty good athletes, actually be able to get the ball carrier on the turf, I was like, this is different. I don't recognize this from them. So I think now with the spring, and then with a little bit more of a normal fall and a regular off season, and we talked to Zachary Carter at Florida, and he said, listen, communication's the biggest difference right now. The fact that I'm able to go bowling with my teammates, or we watch a movie at somebody's house, or we go hang out, or we can just sit in the locker room and talk. He said, we didn't have that for a year. He's like, I feel like I didn't even know my teammates when we went out to play on Saturday. So I do think defenses are going to bounce back to a certain extent. Now, just because of where offense is in general, is it going to dominate the day most weeks? Probably not. But we're going to see an uptick. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And these offenses keep innovating, but so do defenses. Defenses are going to catch up to a lot of the things that are having success, and then you're going to have to see something else come off that. I think that's why Coastal Carolina's having success. You look at what Chip Kelly's doing at UCLA right now. There's some triple option stuff that he's running with that, and he's mixing zone and gap scheme at the same time. It's some really cool stuff. So people, again, they're beginning to morph a little bit, going back to some different things, trying to find a way to work them in because people aren't preparing for them. So it will be better, but I just don't know if defenses are going to necessarily be dominant.
So you were at Athens for the G-Day game back in the spring, and you were really the first one, or at least the one that got my attention. on Georgia in talking about how physically imposing they are, how big they are. And obviously they lost some of those guys, or they didn't have some of those guys last week, and Eric Gilbert and Darnell Washington, but still physically imposing across the board. What did you make of that game, particularly relative to Clemson's offense? You know, we have Clemson fans who are ready to say they're doomed on offense, and they're basically behind the curve. What's your impression of where Clemson's offense is right now, not just in the context of what happened Saturday, but maybe even dating back to last year when they struggled some against Ohio State in the Sugar Bowl, were not able to keep up? Just your general feeling on where they are right now.
I think that some of the things that were highlighted against Georgia, I don't really view them as new. They haven't been a group that has won by being dominant up front under Dabo. It's not been their MO. It's not been who they are. And could that be something that needs to be addressed soon? It's very possible. I mean, to have a guy like Travis Etienne with a quarterback like Trevor Lawrence, who you know can force defenses to play you back and be 11th in the ACC in rushing is, in my opinion, unacceptable. But they were able to work their way around it. I think they did the things they had to do to find ways to move the ball last year. So you remove some of that, and then things are a little bit new. You're not as able to be as complicated or diverse offensively, and then you run into a team that is just superior physically, and you're going to have some problems. So I think if the good news is they're not going to play another front like that in the regular season, and there was only a handful that they could see that would even be close in the postseason. So it's like I try not to take. Obviously, I do Birmingham. I do radio in Birmingham, and so Alabama comes up a lot, and I have a phrase that I call "But Bama." I just try to have fun with, because a lot of times I'll compliment a Clemson player or a South Carolina player or a Texas player or an Iowa State player, and like this Charlie Kolar now at Iowa State, it's a fun tight end. You seen Cam Latu? What Cam Latu did? Like, I don't see how that has to do with anything, because I wasn't even talking about that guy. But I mean, it's Bama, you know. So I try not to use Alabama as a gauge for a lot of teams, because it's just not even fair. And I think this Georgia defense is probably pretty close to that, especially in the middle. When you think about Jordan Davis, Devonta Wyatt, Julian Rochester, I mean, the size, the girth, the strength, the power that they can add inside, it changes everything. And then they got edge guys falling off trees over there, and they can just line them up, and it can be a lighter guy, it can be a heavier guy, it can be kind of a prototypical 3-4 end, it can be a prototypical 4-3 end, it can be a stand-up hybrid linebacker. They got a lot of different guys off the edge that they can hit you with. And, you know, it's not just power. One thing that Georgia does, and they've done it under Kirby, and Dan Lanning does a good job with it, is their stunts and their pressures are run with exact precision. Like, you see a lot of teams that'll run a linebacker defensive tackle twist or a 3-man game where it's 2D linemen, the linebacker loops around, and, you know, they're just kind of trying to get through the gap and get there. These guys are hugging the hip of those defensive linemen, and I mean, it's almost like watching NASCAR. Like you don't realize how close those cars are running to each other until you're at a race. Like, until you really watch the film and focus in on it, you don't realize just how quickly, like, boom, boom, that D tackle comes across, and the linebacker is like, whoop, right behind his hip. And you're like, man, that's tough to stop. So I think all of that together just makes it that much more difficult. But back to your question, I don't think there's anything wrong with the offense. It's just, that's why football is great. Matchups are fun. Matchups make the game. And physically, it was a mismatch for Clemson on Saturday night. It's not going to be that every week. And I would assume if they played again this week, you would see a very different plan as how they wanted to attack that defense. So it's the way that one played out. It might need to be addressed more so than it has been, but I'm not throwing the towel in on Dabo or Clemson or Tony Elliott or DJ Uiagalelei or Brandon Galloway or Will Shipley or any of those guys. Like, you just got beat. It was a bad matchup. You didn't play well, and you try to correct the mistakes and move forward.
You mentioned low-scoring games. Have you ever seen this statistic in a low-scoring, one-score game, one team whose running backs total 9 carries, which Clemson's did?
It's not ideal. It's not what we look at and say, oh, that's winning football. But I'll say this. If you're a Clemson fan, would you rather have had I'm trying to remember the exact year, I think it was 2014, maybe, LSU at Alabama with Leonard Fournette, when they literally are running up, they're lined up in the I, and they're running that I toss to Leonard Fournette over and over and over, and it's like Ashawn Robinson just keeps gobbling it up, and you're like, can you throw a pass across the line of scrimmage? I mean, something. So I would be okay getting away from that if it felt like our best opportunity to be successful was not to do that. And if you're not getting anything there, and that's not helping you set up other things, then there's really no point in it. But I think the problem there became Georgia was able to stymie those handoffs in that run game with so few numbers in the box that it didn't leave you much of an option, because when they did add numbers, then you knew it wasn't going to get going. So I think it was going to have to be quick game, and it was going to have to be finding some matchups. But when they found those matchups, quarterback didn't look comfortable, or quarterback didn't have enough time to be able to take advantage of it down the field.
Should be a fun season if the first weekend is any indication. Man, I appreciate you joining us, and have a great time down in Tuscaloosa visiting with all the Bama coaches and covering truly a special team and program this year. Thanks, Cole.
Hey, Larry, I always appreciate you joining us, and I'm glad to join you anytime, man. Thank you so much.
When you're ready for a complete renovation in your home or business, open the door to more with Harris Home and Harris Commercial. Their local experienced team will totally transform any room space, from beautiful floor coverings to construction to finished details. Harris handles every step of your renovation process, whether it's a kitchen or living room or an industrial or educational setting, like some of the positively stunning work they've done at Clemson University. Go to discoverharris.com and experience a total renovation transformation from Harris Home and Harris Commercial. If you're in the Eastern Midlands and PD area, and you're in any way interested in buying and selling a home, commercial property, land, need to consider reaching out to Uptown Realty. They're based out of Sumter and run by a friend of mine, Patrick Enzer, big Clemson guy, used to cover the Tigers in a newspaper capacity, longtime supporter of Tiger Illustrated, longtime listener to the Dubcast. The home buying process should be an enjoyable experience, so let Patrick and his staff do all the heavy lifting. All you got to do is pick up the phone and call 803-774-0435 or go to uptownrealtysc.com. Want to share a quick word about Founders Federal Credit Union? If you've been to a sporting event in Clemson, you've probably heard about Founders already. They are the official credit union partner of the Clemson Tigers. In addition to that, all Clemson faculty, staff, and students are eligible for membership, as well as IPTAY members. Matt Gross is a proud Clemson alum and the vice president for the Clemson market for Founders Federal Credit Union. Matt's office is located beside the Walmart Neighborhood Market on Old Greenville Highway in Clemson. For more information, go to foundersfcu.com. Another loyal supporter of the Dubcast is Blackacre Law Firm in Greenville, a subsidiary of Parham Smith and Archambault. Blackacre helps South Carolina residents achieve their dreams of home ownership by providing experienced professional representation for real estate closings. Attention to detail is crucial in real estate law. Blackacre is committed to making sure nothing gets by them preparing residential or commercial closings. Blackacre also offers estate planning services for their clients in the Greenville area. Find out more about Blackacre at 864-326-3507. Okay, joined by Brett McMurphy of Action Network. Man, one of the best reporters in the business by far. Thanks for joining the podcast, man. Glad to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Larry. I appreciate it.
First of all, what is it? You have been a sort of a master of reinvention over the years. We're ESPN, and then maybe just, I guess, enlighten folks on your journey since then.
Yeah, when you said master, I thought you were going to go with master of your domain. So I appreciate that.
That too.
Yeah, that too. That's another story. Yeah, so basically, I was a longtime reporter with the Tampa Tribune. I covered the University of South Florida, covered the Big East, covered college football there. And, around 2007, 8, 9, I noticed that, unfortunately, what the future of newspapers looked like, and it wasn't very good. So I was able to jump online. I worked for America AOL Fan House, may it rest in peace. Covered sports there as a national college reporter, and then from there went to CBS Sports, and then got on at ESPN for a few years until they laid off half the company, and I was part of the layoffs. And then went to Stadium Sports, which was basically a digital sports network, and then my deal with them expired in August, and I got a deal with Action Network. And so, basically at Stadium, they're heavily involved with the regional sports networks across the country, cable TV. While not as drastic as newspapers, certainly that future does not look very promising. And so I had this opportunity to get on with Action Network and basically keep doing what I'm doing, report college football news, hopefully break some news, do the same stuff I've always done, covering college football just for a new company. And they've got a emphasis on sports betting. The more states that legalize sports betting, it's only going to get bigger and bigger. And so I do make some picks, from each week, but I wasn't hired to be a tout or anything like that. It was just keep reporting on college football. I was, fortunate enough to break the Nebraska NCAA investigation story my first week there, and they had some other stuff. And so still vote in the AP poll, vote for the Heisman with 99% of the rest of America, and, a lot of other things. So, it's just, I've been fortunate to kind of, take a chance to kind of get out of your comfort zone and try something new. And, so far so good.
Back when you left ESPN and were part of that, I guess that round of layoffs, what year was that?
That would be 2010, 11, all runs together. 15 or 16 is when I was laid off, but I still had 18 months left on my contract. And that's what I think maybe a lot of people don't understand is when they did those mass layoffs, like Mark May, I think he had just signed a 5-year deal, literally like a month before. Well, so they lay him off. Well, what's that mean? Well, that means Mark May gets paid for the next 5 years by ESPN, the same amount that he would have got if he still worked there. Now, the caveat is you have a non-compete clause in your contract, meaning, once I was laid off, I could go work somewhere. But once I started to go work somewhere, if it's before my original contract expired, ESPN was no longer on the hook for paying me. So basically, they figured a lot of hardworking, aggressive journalists would go find other jobs. They wouldn't want to just sit around all day on their couch and eat fiddle faddle. The problem was the market was flooded with people that had been laid off. Sports Illustrated had done layoffs, a couple of other companies. And so basically, when I got laid off, I tried to find other jobs before my 18 months ended, but there simply wasn't anything out there. So I just started reporting on my Facebook page and my Twitter page because that did not violate the non-compete clause in my contract. And then obviously, I got a tip about this wide receivers coach at Ohio State named Zach Smith and some of the domestic violence issues in his past. And so I broke that on my Facebook page, and obviously that blew up when Urban lied about not having any knowledge of it, and et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, that was probably the best thing that could have happened for me because it's so weird because now, when you see somebody break something, it's, reported by Sports Illustrated or Fox Reports or Action Network. Well, I wasn't working for anybody, so people were crediting me, like reported by Brett McMurphy. So that was kind of surreal, the whole way that thing happened. And then also the thing that really helped, and I always joke with Steve Levy, that I owe him, a couple of cases of beer, is when I was still in that non-compete phase, I broke the story that Scott Frost was going from UCF to Nebraska. Well, I broke it during the UCF Memphis American Conference title game. And so Steve Levy's on the air and says, there's multiple reports out there that Scott Frost will be headed to Nebraska. First reported by our own Brett McMurphy.
That's right. I forgot about that.
So that blew up because everybody's like, hey, dumbass, ESPN laid him off. So, but look, Steve's great. It's awesome. It wasn't, he didn't do that on purpose.
Sure.
I mean, look, you couldn't keep, it was hard to keep track of who was laid off and who wasn't. But yeah, that stuff obviously kept my name out there. And so then when my 18 months were up, I was able to get on the stadium and enjoyed it there for 3 years. But, like I said, I think the, Action's got a much brighter future with everything they're aligned with because and so that's basically where I'm at now.
If you were to take 100 sports writers who were in the same situation, under that non-compete arrangement, I would say 100 of them would not think of something like that I just posted on Facebook. That's, a brilliant idea. How did you come up with it? Or was it just a simple a matter of, well, I still have sources and I still am following the news. I guess I'll just post it on Facebook, or did somebody give you the advice to do that? How did that come about?
No, Larry. It's kind of like the Big 12 had in those 4 schools. It's survival. I could have sat on my couch for 18 months and had snacks all day and watched, binge watched every show on the face of the earth and not done anything, and I would have got paid by ESPN. But then when those 18 months were up, how marketable would I be? How in demand would I be if I haven't done anything in 18 months? So it was more like, I still want to try to be as relevant as possible. People, can know where I'm at because of Twitter and social media. And so I just thought, I'm just going to report what I can report and put it on Facebook and Twitter. And, look, the people that I talk to, various sources throughout college football, they've talked to me whether I worked at the Tampa Tribune or AOL Fan House or, ESPN or Stadium or Action Network. I'm sure some people talk to me because, hey, you're at ESPN, but the majority of people talk to me because of me and not because where I work. And so I just wanted to stay relevant. And, I had no idea it would blow up into how it blew up. And, I just wanted to still try to break news and show people, hey, I'm still valuable. I can still do this. I'm not dead. Don't forget about me. And then I was fortunate to break some stuff, but it was obviously I've never experienced anything like that time, but it was kind of I don't want to say it was a neat situation to go through, but obviously I can't understate the fact I knew I had the security of knowing that I was getting paid every 2 weeks. So there wasn't like, oh my God, how are we going to put food on the table or anything like that. So I don't want to give that, make it sound like that at all. But the good news was, if I thought, hey, I got a tip about something, I could track it down. I was like, okay, I'll look into this or I may not. There wasn't like that sense of urgency where you're with a company and you're like, oh man, I got to follow every tip I get. Like, you're locked in with Clemson. Everything you hear about Clemson, you've got to react to immediately. Why? It wasn't that case with me because if I got beat on a story, I guess technically I'm not getting beat on a story because I'm not even employed by somebody. So I could kind of pick and choose stories that I wanted to pursue. And if I got quote beat on something, I didn't feel like I got beat on it because I actually wasn't working. So that was kind of therapeutic.
You were quite literally playing with house money.
Yeah. And then the funny thing is, so when ESPN called everyone on that day, it was in April. It was around my birthday, I remember. And I saw the number pop up, and I was like, "Oh shit! I know what this is about." Because we knew the layoffs were coming down, and I said to them, I said, "Look, I'm getting paid for the final 18 months, right?" They go, "Absolutely. You get paid every 2 weeks, just like you did before." And I said, "Okay, look, how about this? I won't travel. I won't have any expenses. If you need me to do video, I can do it from home. I can do whatever. You will not pay me a penny more than you're going to pay me for the next 18 months. Can I keep working for you?" And they said no. So if they would have said yes, they would have had Urban Meyer. They would have had Scott Frost. Several other stories that I broke in that time. But it's kind of funny. Deadspin did a story on me and said basically ESPN paid me to break the Urban Meyer story, but had to credit me because I was no longer an employee of ESPN.
God. I can't get over that. I can't. Did you get any type of blowback from them for that?
No, not at all. At first they said initially, and it was through, they had a lawyer. It wasn't like, and look, the people that I work with there are absolutely great.
Yeah.
I have no issues with them. They would have a lawyer reach out and say, "Hey, you need to keep in mind about the non-compete. If you violate that, you violate the contract." And basically I'd respond to them and I'd say, "Can you be more specific?" And they go, "Well, let's get on a call." And I'm like, "No, I don't want to get on a call. I want you to send it to me in writing, because that way you can't, it's cut and dried what it was." And then basically, I'm sure they talked to other people there and said, "Look, he had Facebook before he worked at ESPN. He had Twitter before he worked at ESPN. We can't keep him from posting stuff on his personal accounts." And then from that point on, there was really nothing. But no, during that time when I broke all that stuff, so many of those people I worked with at ESPN, they would text me and say, "Man, you're crushing it. I love you. I went on the air. I went on the air today, and I made sure to emphasize that the story was reported by Brett McMurphy." And I mean, that made me feel really good. And there's one report. I don't want to tell you who it is because I don't know if they want it out there. But two things that really will stick with me forever. One is a reporter who still works at ESPN sent me a text and said, and I didn't look at it this way. I'm just trying to report stuff and stay relevant. But they said, you're reporting of Urban Meyer and all that stuff with Zach Smith. They said that is the greatest. How they phrase it? That is the greatest going away or get back to a former employer that you can ever have. That's the greatest FU ever. Or something. And then the other thing that this really meant a lot. It's somebody, you can guess, I won't tell you, but they are currently a sports anchor for ESPN. I know this person pretty good. I mean, we're not like best friends, I got to know him through working at ESPN and stuff. Again, we're not best buddies or anything, but know each other okay. During all this time when I was reporting this stuff, they sent me a text message and said, "Hey, you're crushing it, man. Great job. Hey, I just wanted to let you know, I don't know what your financial situation's like, but if you need any money to help with your reporting, let me know and I'll help you out." And I was like so blown away because I'm obviously competition for ESPN. Obviously I'm not, the anchor could care less who breaks stuff, but still the fact that they would sit there and offer to help me report on these stories, taking into consideration if I had financial issues, that just blew me away. And I know, look, ESPN gets criticized for a lot of things, and a lot of it's deservedly so, but there's a lot of really, really good people there. It's kind of like guilt by association, but I'd say 99.9% of the people there were great to me, and I loved working with them. And it just sucked that the company and the higher ups decided they needed to cut people because the stock numbers weren't what they wanted to be or what they needed to be or whatever the reasoning for making all these moves were.
So back then, it was a shock to hear Brett McMurphy and I forgot some of the other notable names are gone. Now, several rounds of layoffs later, it's not even remotely shocking anymore to hear some of these giants that are no longer with the company. What do ESPN seems like a shell of what it used to be. What do you make of that decline and the reasons behind it? You mentioned the stock prices and all that. What's your sort of assessment of how they've eroded, I guess?
Well, I think, as I talked earlier about Stadium and kind of how they're struggling a little bit because of the cable network industry, obviously ESPN is a great example of that. And I think with the exception of maybe a handful of people there, Stephen A. Smith, Scott Van Pelt, probably Adam Schefter, maybe a couple more, everybody there is expendable. And, that's not a slight against any of those people. I was expendable. But, yeah, there were a ton of people that got laid off that were 100 times better than I was. So I'll be the first to say that. I mean, Andy Katz was like Mr. ESPN, and he got laid off. Jason Stark. I mean, look, we could list them all. It'd take 2 hours. I think now, though, the big thing is because there's so many non-traditional media outlets now, you got Dan Le Batard doing basically what he did at ESPN, but he's doing it for himself. You don't have to work at the 100-pound or 100 million pound gorilla to be relevant, to be impactful. And that's something that I learned really quickly breaking stuff on Facebook. I didn't have to have the ESPN airwaves to be able to break one of the biggest stories in college football that year. And that kind of showed me that, wow, if you've got good, relevant information and, people like what you're doing, they're going to find you and it makes it easier to be successful that way. Obviously, it helps. I had a background at ESPN, so people were aware of who I was. And so now I think you see all these people going into non-traditional media, Ryan Russillo, there's a million of them, Adnan Virk, all these different people. And so I think because all these different non-traditional media, outlets, networks, whatever you want to call them, have popped up, I think that's a lot of people are going to these places because they no longer have to work at ESPN to be able to do these sort of things. And they can go, Dan Patrick, obviously he's been gone for a while, but Dan Patrick has kind of created his own, he's a media company with, upon himself. And so I think that's part of it. And quite frankly, ESPN is cut down on the number of employees they've had because they've cut down on the number of live shows they do, the number of sports centers, and they've certainly put their emphasis on TV rights. And that makes a lot of sense because, I seem to hear a lot, you probably do too, is people say, well, I only watch ESPN for the games. And so if that is true and the numbers are down for their non-live sporting events, then you simply don't need as many people that you had in the past.
Back in 2014, ESPN had decided to create several positions across the country. It was like they were rivalry positions, and one of them they asked, sort of reached out to me. They wanted to create one for the Clemson South Carolina rivalry, like a full-time position. Back then, of course, that was a really good rivalry. Really entertaining and marketable rivalry when Spurrier was there and going back and forth with Dabo and all that. So I was, of course, wanting to jump at the chance to do, work for ESPN. It's the gold standard at that time. Well, Texas A&M comes to Columbia in the opener of 14 and beats the crap out of them. And then the folks at ESPN said, yeah, we're going to put that on the back burner for now. And initially I was kind of upset, like, wow, that was my chance to work for ESPN. But ever since, that's the best break I've ever gotten, because had I had that materialized, who knows? I don't know if I'd be working for them or not. If I were, I might be in Manhattan, Kansas or something like that right now, for one of their other ideas. But the fact that their whims changed just on the result of one game, I just remember being like, I couldn't believe it. I mean, you're talking about careers here, and people's lives, and no, I don't think we're gonna do that anymore. But it was I was very fortunate, of course, in hindsight, because would not have been a good move. But anyway, even back then, that was sort of a sign that, man, things aren't all they're cracked up to be, or what you think they are, maybe, at ESPN working for them.
Yeah, well, I think, again, I'm not, I don't want to sit here and I don't want people to think, oh, I'm slamming ESPN, because that's not how I view that place, and certainly not my experience with working there. But they do, they'll take some chances. And I think, probably around that time, you go back a little bit further, they used to have like beat writers for probably the top, 20, top 30 Power 5 schools. And they would have those reporters there. And then that kind of like, okay, they weren't bottom line, they weren't getting enough traffic off the website to justify having all those people. And so those people either got reassigned or laid off, or when their contract was up, they weren't renewed, and they kind of got rid of it. And it used to be a lot bigger operation, but certainly they cut back because of it used to be when they would go hire somebody, they would just outbid other companies and hire people. But now they've obviously, reeled it back because of, the financial situations that are impacting everybody. And, it obviously is a much different place, but it is funny when you mentioned you thought you'd go work for them. When I was at CBS Sports, and I had 2 weeks of vacation coming up. And then after that vacation, I was going to make a determination that I was going to go to USA Today. I was going to be their national college football columnist. And I basically had made that decision. I left CBS, but when I didn't have a deal with them. But I told them, that I had an offer from USA Today, and they basically said, okay, well, we're going to give you like an additional $5,000 or something. And I'm not saying that's not a lot of money. And look, every bit of money is a lot of money. But compared to what USA Today was offering me, it was chump change. And so I was prepared. I was going to USA Today, even though I had concerns about going to a newspaper. And obviously they're more than a newspaper, they're digital. And so literally I was going to do that on a Monday. Literally on the Friday before that Monday, Ed Placey of ESPN called me out of the blue. He's one of the higher-ups at ESPN in college football, and said, hey, Brett, would you want to be a college football reporter for us? And I'm like, what? And he goes, yeah. We want to add another college football reporter to work, with Joe Shad, kind of like we have Mort and Schefter doing the NFL. And I was like, wow, well, Monday I'm actually going to sign with USA Today. And they're like, well, hold on. Give us a week. We can talk to you. And I said, well, I have absolutely 0% TV experience. And they're like, that's okay. We'll teach you. Well, I'm still waiting for those lessons. But what happened is when ESPN made me their first offer, it was ridiculously low, because they're so, like you just said, they're so used to everyone saying, oh, I've always wanted to work at ESPN. I wanted to go work at ESPN, where they offer you less than market value because so many people will jump to go to ESPN. And I had an agent back then. I told my agent, I said, I'm not accepting that. I grew up as a print reporter, as a print journalist. I didn't have these dreams of going on TV and working at ESPN. So maybe I looked at it differently. they came back for another offer. I said, no, I'm not. That's not. Why would I take less money to go to ESPN? So that went on for several days. Finally, their number got up to similar to what USA Today. I think actually USA Today offered me more, but it was close enough that I thought long-term ESPN I'd have more stability at ESPN rather than going to USA Today, which is a newspaper. Little did I know that, I would get laid off 4.5 years later. But yeah, it was, I promise you that was a blessing in disguise for you, because you would have signed on. They would have, given you a 1 or 2 year deal, and then that deal's up, and then they're like, okay, well, yeah, we decided to shift gears. And then you're kind of like, well, I kind of thought I'd be here for, forever, and now I'm not. And then you're scrambling, and your family's scrambling on, what in the world am I going to do next?
So I'm fascinated, and I am eternally admiring of the really good national reporters who are able to stay on top of a lot of things. I just don't know how you do it, because with me, yes, I am responsible for being on top of something, but it is one thing. and the longer I'm here, I've been here for 18 years, not easier, but the more networked you are and plugged in and all
absolutely.
That. So the longer the longer you're at one place, the easier it is to do your job. Whereas I don't know how you guys do it. Like, does it ever get old, or do you kind of live for that particular aspect of the job where you're constantly texting and on the phone and networking and things like that?
No, it certainly doesn't get old. And, and I appreciate you saying that. It doesn't get old. I mean, I was a beat guy. I covered USF, so I know I can relate 1,000% with your experiences covering Clemson. The longer you're with covering a program, the more you know, the more people you know, the more. And if you do if you do a good job like you do, then people will trust you. They'll confide in you. That will lead to more stories and on down the road. But yeah, there's no real secret to this. You just kind of try to get as much stuff as you can. And look, I realize, there's a bunch of other good people that cover college football. You mentioned Andy. I work with him at the Tampa Tribune. Love the guy. He is tremendous with the Athletic. There's a number of other people that do really good jobs. But look, at least me, I don't know what other people think about it. I realize, look, I'm not going to break every story. I mean, I'm probably not going to break half of all the stories, or maybe even a third, maybe even not even a tenth of them. There's just so much stuff out there. So it's just, I try to, get us whatever I can and break it and report it. And, it obviously keeps you on your toes. There's a lot of stuff going on, and depending on what's going on in college football, there's different kind of topics or hot button items depending on the year. I mean, 10 years ago it was expansion. Now it's expansion and realignment again. It was NIL. It was the college football playoff. It was, you can go on and on about all the different things. And then you've got the stuff, for the individual schools that go on. So yeah, I appreciate that, but it's just, I don't have a secret bullet or any magic formula. You just kind of, it's just like reporting anything. And if anyone's out there that wants to learn about reporting, I would just say this: the more people you talk to, the more you're going to find out information. And that's the bottom line. If you don't talk to anybody, you're not going to learn anything. And, get to know people as people. Don't, if you're covering a football program, and I'm sure you do this, if you have time to go talk to an assistant coach or a player or something, instead of grilling them about this week's game, get to know them as a person. Get to see what they're like, get to know what their interests are outside of football, and just get to know them. And then so that then they can relate to you as a person and not just a reporter trying to suck information out of them. And then bottom line is, if they trust you, you treat them right, they tell you it's off the record, it stays off the record, then they're more likely to help you out down the road. And then, obviously that's like a snowball down the mountain. And the more you as long as they can trust you, people will talk to you. As long as you treat people well, 99% of them will treat you well and try to help you when they can. And so that's basically what I've tried to do through the years. And, some people you get along with, some people you don't. That's the way of the world. And I just try to do the best I can.
I'm sure you get young people, college kids, whatever, on a fairly regular basis asking you for advice. How do I want to do this? What do I do? How do I do what you do? And the answer is harder than ever to give, because the normal ladder for a sports writer has been obliterated.
Right.
Okay, you go to journalism school, or you do internships in college at a local newspaper. Then you graduate, then you go to a small paper, you cover high schools for a couple of years, then you go to a bigger paper. Well, now it's like, I'm not going to advise somebody to do that right now, because the job might not even exist. And so, but I think you are an example of what I tell them a lot is I can't really clearly articulate for you, what to do, like a roadmap, but I can tell you that if you can get information before anybody else, then you can make a living doing this. And so if you're a college kid, use your connections, and you might be in a class with a few players, get to know them.
Right.
Because the Adam Schefters and the big breakers of the world like you, it just goes to show it, regardless of the medium, it still goes back to relationships and being able to get information before anybody else has it.
You're dead on. It's 100% about relationships. And, will people trust you or not? And that's what I tell, young journalists, is that if someone tells you it's off the record, then do not use it. Because you know what? If we're having a conversation, I said, hey, Larry, this is off the record. And then the next day you publish it, or you go on the air with it, or whatever your outlet is, then you know what? I think, okay, I'm never talking to that guy again, because I can't trust the guy. But you know what? If I tell you, hey, man, you can't use this, you don't use it, and then the news gets out some other way, you know what I think is, wow, he kept his word. Even though other people got it out, he kept his word. So what do? Then next time I'm like, hey, you know what? I'll help Larry out. He kept his word. And yeah, it's total relationships. And also for upcoming journalists, the thing I tell them is, look, I don't want to tell anybody not to get into the business, but I want to make this very clear. Do not do this because you think you're going to make a lot of money, because that is 1,000,000% inaccurate. If you love reporting, if you love doing that, then yeah, do it. But you're right. If you can find a niche, is something to do something better than other people are doing it, whether it's reporting, whether it's recruiting rankings, whether it's evaluating players, whatever it is, absolutely do that. I think it's more challenging for people that want to be like a studio host or a sports center anchor or something like that, just because there's so many of those, and it's not really you can, people either going to like you or they're not, if that makes sense. Like, it's not going to say, oh wow, that guy read that script so much better than the other guy, so we're gonna hire that guy. I mean, yes, you watch TV, people that you like better than others, but again, you want to be able to have some kind of quality or something that other people don't have to make yourself more valuable, for your long-term future. In journalism, whatever journalism is going to look like, a day from now, a week from now, or a year from now.
What is your philosophy on using Twitter, monitoring Twitter, interacting with people on Twitter, or just on social media in general, I guess I should say?
I used to, when I was at the Tampa Tribune, I would probably respond to every Twitter response that I got when I was at the Tampa Tribune. I had 2,300 people that followed me on Twitter. Now I have almost blows me away to say this. Now I have almost 250,000 people. So I there's absolutely no way I can keep track of all the mentions. That's unfortunate. I'd like to. I do, though. I'm happy to report that I will respond to probably 90% of the emails I get. Because if people take the time out of their day to send me an email, I'll respond to them, even if they're cursing me up a storm and tell me how clueless I am or whatever. I will respond. But if you send me a response on Twitter, quite honestly, I'm not going to see it. And the perfect example is when I put my AP rankings out, my AP ballot out. I joke about this. I'm not sure it's a joke, though. I literally close my laptop for the next 24 hours because the responses are so predictable. Yeah. You're an idiot. YOUR. Why'd you rank my team so low? Why isn't my team ranked? Why is this team ranked higher? Et cetera, et cetera. And literally, if I looked at my mentions, it looks like a slot machine where they're spinning around. They're just coming in so fast, especially if it's a fan base that it feels like I didn't rank them high enough.
What do you? So there are some I guess national media personalities who clearly spend a ton of time on Twitter. And my question is your boss asking you to do this, or are you just doing it to do it? First of all, like, how do you monetize that? Like, what is that doing for your bottom line? Number one. And number two, if you're sitting on your couch reacting to everything on Twitter for 14 hours a day, well, when are you working? What is the expense, not networking with people and not actually being plugged into what's going on? You see what I'm saying? Do you observe?
Yeah, no, I know. It's like I go in phases because Twitter it can suck the life out of you, man. I mean, it just does. And, I could sit in front of Twitter for 24 hours a day if you wanted to. I don't think that's necessarily a good thing. I wouldn't recommend that. But you do see things on Twitter where people will report different things, or you'll see information come out and that will spark ideas or remind you, hey, I need to check with this guy about that story or this, or I need to follow that down, or wow, there's breaking news. Somebody's reporting, this is going on. What else can I find out about that situation? So, yeah, I try to get on it a lot. I'm not on it currently as we're speaking now. So, Dabo Swinney may have resigned or got a 100-year deal. I don't know. And I won't know till I get done here. But so I try to balance it. It's, look, I'm sure there's people that are on it, reporters that are on it 24/7, and more power to them. I just can't do it. I do get on it, though, to see what's going on. But I can't sit here and say I tell myself, okay, I've got to be on Twitter 10 hours today, or I need to be on 8 hours today, or whatever it is. It just it depends on what's going on. If I'm talking to you, if I'm doing an interview or whatever, I'm certainly not on Twitter. If, you're at a game or different things, it just kind of varies. But it is scary, though, because, if you actually spend some time with your family, or, spend an afternoon, by doing something with my daughter or whatever, and then you come back on Twitter and you're like seeing all this stuff you missed, and you're like, oh my God, this guy's fired, that guy got a raise, this guy's in the transfer portal. I mean, it feels like, Jesus, I just missed everything because I wasn't on Twitter for the last 4 hours. But I've come to accept that, that's just how it is. I'm not going to get everything. I'm not going to see everything, but I try to be on it as often as I can. I'm not I'm not chained to it by any means, but it is, I think it is valuable. And it's, I think people that are old enough to remember the old AP wire, it's kind of like the AP wire, because you get if you're following the right people, you get a stream of whatever that day's news is, and you see it, come across your Twitter feed.
Well, if in the last 40 minutes Dabo has resigned, we're both screwed. So,
we're both screwed.
Brett, man, thank you so much for giving me your valuable time, and this has been a wonderful conversation. Really appreciate it, man.
Hey, you got it, Larry. You can wake up the listeners now, but I appreciate you having me on.
All right, awesome stuff there from Brett and also Cole Cubelic, Andy Staples. Really appreciate all three of them for making this a great podcast this week. Also appreciate our very loyal and generous sponsors for their support. Most of all, thanks to all of you for hitting play every week. Really appreciate it. Be safe, everybody. Have a great weekend, and we'll be back next week.